Thank you all for being here. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Issues Conference. It is now in full swing. We've had a couple of sessions this afternoon. Earlier today, myself, Lori, Veronica, and Lauren had the honor of welcoming Vice President Harris with the Democratic leadership team, and we are so proud to stand with her, President Biden, and our Senate colleagues to put people over politics. The Vice President gave a remarkable and compelling presentation to the House Democratic Caucus, and we just had an opportunity to brief the caucus on recent polling and our work to ensure that we keep people over politics as our focus. Growing the middle class, lowering costs, building safer communities, doing that work each and every day as we have done for the last 13 months. And the clear contrast, which you, of course, have heard us talk about in the past, to me, and I think to the American people, is stark. House Democrats trying to find solutions to real problems and consequential challenges, while House Republicans remain mired in chaos, dysfunction, and confusion. House Democrats fighting for the American people, House Republicans fighting each other, as has been the case since the day that the 118th Congress was sworn in. We've got a lot of work to do over the next 10 months. As the House Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, the DPCC, continues to engage the broader caucus on our message development and on disseminating that message to the American people. And it's a real privilege for me to be able to work with the incredible, talented colleagues who stand here to my left and right. And that, of course, includes and starts with the distinguished gentlewoman from Texas, Co-Chair Veronica Escobar.
Thanks so much, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Excuse me. We just had a really great visit with our Democratic colleagues, and as Joe mentioned, we had the opportunity to highlight how the work that we have been doing really with President Biden and Vice President Harris's leadership to grow the middle class, lower the cost of prescription drugs, lower the cost of health care, cap insulin prices. All of those efforts really are resonating with Americans. It's what Americans want. We are not just on the right side of these issues as House Democrats, but we are on the right side of the public. This is what the American people want. And you all just saw firsthand this week yet more examples of Republicans being unable or maybe even unwilling to govern on behalf of the American people. They are so caught up in their performative politics that the American people, when it comes to Republicans, get left behind. But our work with, again, the leadership of the Biden-Harris administration is something that the American people want. We are now seeing even more investments take shape across the country with infrastructure, broadband, rebuilding bridges, bringing clean drinking water and high-speed internet to more communities. And voters support the way that we are paying for these things. They know that the tax system, as a result of Republicans prioritizing the wealthiest corporations and the wealthiest 1%, that Americans know that when we pay for these investments by making sure that tax cheats pay their fair share, we can afford this. And Americans support the way that we pay for them also. So in order to talk about how we meet people where they are and connect with them directly, I will pass it over to my co-chair, Lauren Underwood.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We are very excited to be here in Leesburg this week at the 2024 Democratic Issues Conference for 3 days of family conversations and charting the path ahead. There's work to be done to make sure the American people know all the ways that we're fighting for working families, that we're growing the middle class, defending our values from an increasingly extreme Republican Party. And the contrast could not be more clear. While extreme MAGA Republicans plot to criminalize abortion and restrict our freedoms, Democrats are protecting reproductive rights and taking action to defend our liberties. While they waste our time with phony impeachment attempts, and you all know how that worked out, and schemes to slash Social Security and Medicare, Democrats are fighting to make good on our promises for working families, to bring down costs and make life more affordable, and to expand access to quality, affordable health care. On issue after issue, House Democrats are putting people over politics, while this extreme MAGA Republican majority pulls us further and further into chaos and dysfunction. As a Democratic caucus, we are united, and we are clear on the solutions we need to meet the urgent needs of American families. And as the DPCC, we're going to make sure that the American people know it. Now, as a major part of that is making sure that we're connecting with our communities where they are in all of our communications. So it's no secret that in 2024, people are on their phones, like all of you right now. Yes, okay. So they're on YouTube and Instagram, they're on Twitch, and they're scrolling through their Facebook feeds. We have a responsibility to be present in that environment in an authentic and an engaging way. Thankfully, it's not difficult for Democrats. Our caucus reflects the beautiful diversity of the American people. And the members, well, we're exciting and we're charismatic. And our communities are with us in this fight to protect our values. So we are very excited for what's to come and the work ahead this year. And for more, I'm happy to turn it over to my co-chair, Lori Trehan.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Lauren. So I think I've been to 6 legislative issues conferences so far, but this is my first one as a member of the DPCC team, so it's super exciting for me. You know, I did run for this position a couple of months ago because I want to do everything in my power to make sure that when we put our arm up in January and take that oath, we're doing so under Speaker Hakeem Jeffries. And I think that's what this conference is all about, is really putting the nuts and bolts on how we're going to do that. We're off to a great start. We've already heard from Leader Jeffries and Chair Aguilar, certainly our Vice President Harris, where we've talked about the transformative legislative achievements that House Democrats passed along the Biden-Harrison administration, as well as the work that remains ahead to deliver for the hardworking families across the country. The DPCC is laser focused on how we take our accomplishments, our vision, and how we communicate them to the American people. We know our agenda is overwhelmingly popular with voters. Americans trust Democrats by a wide margin on protecting women's reproductive health care, making corporations and billionaires pay their fair share, and lowering costs by bringing home supply chains and cracking down on price gouging. And as we're starting to see, people are starting to feel differently and better about the economy, thanks to the investments Democrats have made in American manufacturing, in American families, and American workers. But despite the popularity of these investments, extreme MAGA Republicans have made it clear that they want to repeal many of those programs. They want to allow massive corporations and the ultra-wealthy to cheat on their taxes. They want to repeal Medicare's ability to negotiate drug prices for our seniors. That's politics at its worst, and it's the last thing hardworking families like the one I grew up in want to see from their representatives. And it's why House Democrats are going to continue making clear between now and November and every single day in between that we are the party that puts people over politics. So thank you so much. Joe will take your questions.
Yes, he will.
The team will take your questions. Yes, sir. And we'll go to Max.
Thank you, Joe, because I don't know why it takes the brother to be at the forefront for me to get a question.
My pleasure.
I know. You know I watch you all around. You know, I go from state to state with y'all. You two are a perfect example of it doesn't take all blacks to get elected. Underwood is an awesome story. But we agree with that she's an awesome story. And a wonderful person, but yeah. Both of y'all have districts that didn't reflect what we thought should have come out, and it did. Have the Democratic Party woke up to the fact that a black man and a black woman can win even in a half-white district, and let alone in the black districts? Have the Democratic Party considered the fact that blacks are winning?
Yeah, I would say the answer is yes. And, you know, House Democratic Caucus, and this is a stark contrast again with the House Republican Caucus, real clear juxtaposition. We look like America. It's a mosaic when you think about the diversity of views, of course, ethnic diversity, gender diversity, people from all walks of life who bring something unique to the table as we work, again, undergirded by our shared values to deliver for the American people. That is the House Democratic Caucus, led by Leader Jeffries, by Whip Clark, by Chairman Aguilar, and by the incredible members that are here today. And so, as you mentioned, Representative Underwood's district, my district, again, you can go down the list. We aren't the only examples. There are many others within our caucus who, I think, again, represent the incredible diversity of our country. And fundamentally, it is because we share the same values and our message resonates with the American people, because what they care about, we care about, right? Ultimately, they want to see a Congress that's focused on solving problems, not on wasting time. They want to see a Congress that's focused on pocketbook issues, on making the lives of the American people better, on improving our communities. And that is the House Democratic agenda. So I'm happy to let Co-Chair Underwood add, but
the only thing I would add is when we look at our map in 2024, we have a robust class of red to blue candidates, two of whom are former colleague Mondaire Jones and Janelle Bynum out in Oregon, two phenomenal African-American candidates who are going to win this November. We're really excited to welcome them, well, in Mondaire's case, back, and Janelle's case, welcome them to the House Democratic Caucus.
Can I do a quick follow-up? I just did the walkthrough for the DNC. Out of about 400 press, it wasn't 20 black. Are we doing all we can? And I'll make sure I call. I did call Clyburn, but I need to make. I want to see Hakeem become the speaker. I was with Obama the whole time. I can't wait to see Hakeem become the speaker and kill this world with his speech. And I see you're learning some of his lessons.
I appreciate that. We certainly agree with you on that front. We can't wait until Hakeem Jeffries is the speaker as well.
And black press is almost omitted from that process. And the people in charge of it, let's be honest, are white people who used to being in charge, who are not being fair. But let me say to this team, they were great. Let me just say that. So
thank you, and we'll certainly follow up. I hear you, and we'll follow up. Max?
So you just heard from Vice President Harris, the entire Democratic caucus. She's been a figure who's come under a lot of criticism in the media, and the poll numbers show she's underwater in favorability. We can talk about whether they're accurate or not, but certainly the narrative which Harris has not had the most smooth tenure as Vice President. Can you talk about what she said to House Democrats and your thoughts on her tenure?
I'll ask Veronica to talk a bit about her presentation and what she shared with the caucus. I would just simply say each and every one of us have had an opportunity to work with the Vice President. We all came in the same class, the class of 2018, majority makers as we reclaimed the majority in the 116th Congress when the Vice President was the United States Senator. Several of us have known her for quite some time. She is thoughtful. She is results-oriented. And I think she's done a terrific and outstanding job as Vice President. She talked a lot today about the Biden-Harris agenda, the record of results that they have put forward over the course of the last 3.5 years, which rivals any presidency in the modern history of the country. You have to go back to the 1960s and the Great Society of President Lyndon Johnson to find a Congress and an administration that is more legislatively productive than the Harris-Biden administration. And a big part of that has been her role in the work that she has done. So she was received in a very welcoming way, and House Democratic Caucus members were excited to have her here and grateful that she took the time out of her very busy schedule to come visit with us. Veronica?
Not much more to add. I think you laid it out succinctly, and I'm eager to get to more questions as well. There was nothing but love in that room for the Vice President. We have a lot of affinity and admiration for her. She is incredibly hardworking. She has been crisscrossing the country on her tour. She's been uplifting reproductive rights, which is central to many American voters, but especially, obviously, to women. Just to piggyback on what Joe said, this has been one of the most productive, successful administrations in my lifetime. In my lifetime, I've never seen the kind of resources coming into communities like mine before, have never felt the level of compassion and support from an administration. And I think that it's really important for us to give credit where credit is due, and much of that credit goes to the Vice President and the President when it comes to the success that we've had. We've got a lot more work to do, We have goals that we've set out going forward. We're excited about another term and continuing to finish the job, and which is why the Biden-Harris administration is running for re-election. And we hear the American public, how far we've come, what we have left to do, and we could not have more compassionate leaders than President Biden and Vice President Harris.
It helps when one of the DPCC co-chairs is a co-chair of the Biden-Harris presidential re-election campaign, as Veronica's. Lauren?
I just also wanted to add, we're coming off of a tremendous victory in South Carolina. Vice President Harris was on the ground 3 times leading up to that election on February 3rd. Just yesterday in Nevada, a big Democratic victory for President Biden and Vice President Harris. She's an asset on the campaign trail. She is an incredible surrogate. I've welcomed her to my community willingly and would be delighted to have her back. When I had the most competitive race in the country, welcomed her. So, we got to just dispel with this stuff. She's incredible. And I look forward to 4 more years.
Yes, ma'am.
So, a lot of what you guys have said, you talked about the economy and how folks are feeling better about it, but especially the productivity of 2021, 2022, when Democrats, had both the House, Senate, and the White House. But do you think that message is resonating with voters, especially after watching, the chaos of the last year and going into this year? Do you think that message is resonating with voters? And what, especially because of how slow so much of the legislative achievements you guys have had gone into communities, how long it'll take over 5-10 years to see the full results? What is your guys' plan to really make sure people remember who is giving them all of these things that you guys have worked for?
It's a great question, I would just say, and then ask Lori to answer as well. She's a member of the Regional Leadership Council, which is chaired by Steny Hoyer, former Majority Leader. Leader Jeffries, in his wisdom, impaneled Leader Hoyer to take on that role and to assemble a group of members who represent the wide spectrum of the House Democratic Caucus to focus and zero in on implementation and ultimately ensuring that these resources are getting into the communities and that we're talking about it and amplifying that because, of course, that's a core component of the DPCC's role as well. I would just simply say the empirical data all suggests that every proposal that we have promoted and that House Democrats have pursued and that President Biden has pursued is deeply popular with the American public. The challenge is ensuring that enough folks know about the work that we have done, and we're certainly doing more in that regard, and also that the voters understand the intervening force that unfortunately has shut down progress in our nation's capital. And that intervening force are extreme MAGA Republicans. Over the course of the last 13 months, they've done nothing to address cost of living, nothing to address inflation, nothing to address border security. Any of the issues that the American public care deeply about, House Republicans have been MIA. And so part of our work over the course of the next 10 months is explaining to the American public not just what we've done, but what we will do if given the opportunity to govern. And I think you'll hear more of that over the coming months. Lori?
Yeah, great. Thank you. I think you're right to point out that folks are changing on the economy, and it's important that we acknowledge that we have more work to do. Some people feel it when they go to the grocery store and they see the egg prices come down because they've just been looking at it every single week. Some see it at the gas pump. We can't talk about these macroeconomic indicators that don't resonate. We have to talk about what people are actually feeling, and they are feeling an economy that they're feeling it's getting stronger, and it's impacting their pocketbooks. We're going to use the scale of our caucus to talk about how we've made a difference in the lives of the people we represent. And the investments that have, whether it's infrastructure, chips and science, it's different across every single district, but people are feeling the cap on insulin prices, and they're awaiting and look forward to the fact that we're negotiating those next 10 drugs. They appreciate the fact that, they can now weatherize their homes and see a decrease in those energy bills. So I think talking about the things that people are actually experiencing right now. In my hometown, we had a temporary bridge for 40 years. A temporary bridge. People are scared to go over it. The federal government is putting $180 million in finally to replace that bridge. in a community that never thought they would see, one, that bridge replaced, and two, the government replace it. So those are the stories that we're going to tell over and over again, and every single community has one, and I really think that's going to make a difference come November.
I was trying to get to the second row, but nobody raising their hands in the second row. Yes, ma'am.
Just a follow-up to the gentleman's question there. It's still been said that President Biden is still struggling to make sure that he can energize black voters to come out, and it appears particularly with black men. Now, obviously, Democrats are definitely going to win the black vote, as they've had for many, many years, but still there's concern that he's struggling to really energize the black vote. How are Democrats going to be able to do that this year? And on top of that, South Carolina, sure, you have Biden who won in a landslide, but the turnout, though, was dismally low. Can you address that?
Well, I would just simply say, I mean, again, I don't speak on behalf of the president's reelection campaign. I was here earlier for the press conference that the leadership held, and I think you heard Assistant Leader Clyburn talk in a very compelling way about the takeaways from the South Carolina primary and the fact that black turnout was higher by percentage. I hear you, and I'm just telling you with respect to the question you posed regarding African Americans and African American men, the results speak for themselves. And the fact that black turnout was higher, and I think as he told the story and provided the example with respect to HBCUs in his state and in his district where you had some of the highest turnout, evidences that our message, the message that the president and House Democrats and Senate Democrats have all centered on, resonates. We've got to be intentional. We have to ensure that it's well-resourced and that we're getting out to each and every community. And I think you're going to see more of that over the coming weeks and months, as Leader Clyburn said in the prior press conference. But no, I think we are confident that the message that we've deployed is resonating with American people, including African American voters, and I think that'll continue. That's my thought on it. Yes, sir.
I want to ask about artificial intelligence. It's a technology that's not regulated very much, but going to play a big part in a lot of the online messaging, especially at the grassroots level. I'm just curious, has that been a consideration as you all think about messaging to voters that kind of cutting through the misinformation and disinformation out there, and what all are you doing to make sure that voters are able to kind of delineate between what's true, what's false, especially if Trump's going to be the nominee? I mean, I'm sure it's just going to increase. I just want to get your thoughts on artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I would just simply say with respect to the DCCC, just in terms of talking to voters, not to get out in front of them, but they have a robust operation that they've rolled out in terms of misinformation, combating misinformation and disinformation. AI, obviously, as you said, a looming threat in terms of the ways in which it will be leveraged in that respect. Lauren Underwood has led, I think, as you heard her talk a bit about the digital work in terms of amplifying and trying to increase the ways in which members are using digital mediums, given the fact that it is now the predominant way in which most voters, most citizens are accessing information about our work. So,
I would just add, with respect to the Digital Foundations initiative that we launched last month, what's really clear is that there are a number of platforms that people are using. Constituents have choices where they receive information. If it's not Facebook, maybe it's Instagram, maybe it's YouTube, maybe it's TikTok, maybe they're scrolling everything. Maybe it's Twitch, maybe it's Threads, maybe it's Twitter. We have a responsibility to meet people where they are, and when we don't, that void gets filled. Now there's new tools for bad actors to spread misinformation in those voids. So what do we have to do to respond? We have to show up. We have to show up and spread the correct information, educate voters, not only on accomplishments, but just basics of what we're doing in Congress, right? On the campaign side, when election day is, right? Like, there's just like some things that we need to be communicating, and we need to be doing it with simplicity and repetition on all platforms. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but that's in large part what we shared with our caucus today during our presentation, is just to help people feel empowered to engage in spaces online where they may not have previously. But if we're going to be successful, if our democracy is going to succeed, we can no longer afford to surrender and leave some spaces just to either domestic or foreign actors and the lies that they might want to spread on the internet.
Last question.
Yes, sir. And then we'll do two.
So with respect to the Israel-Gaza war, obviously that's been a major issue, and it's a big issue, particularly in some of the swing districts in New York. And you've got AI PAC going after some Democratic incumbents, and as you saw yesterday on the House Republicans for the Clean Israel bill, it was members who voted on either side, plenty of them. How do Democrats and the DPCC in particular handle sort of the diversity of views on this issue?
Well, I mean, I guess what I would say is, first and foremost, House Democratic Caucus, Democratic Party writ large, is a big tent party. And we have, as I mentioned earlier, a mosaic of views across the ideological spectrum. We're all ultimately united by our shared values. And, with respect to the vote that was taken yesterday, obviously, as Leader Jeffries and others articulated in our House leadership, a clear political ploy by Speaker Johnson, I think, to weaponize debates around foreign policy for political points, which to us is unacceptable. It ought to be unacceptable to our colleagues on the other side of the aisle. But it's part and parcel to the way that they've run the House over the course of the last 13 months, and I don't know that we necessarily expect them to take a different approach. They should, but I don't think they will. So I think you'll continue to see a House Democratic Caucus, as I said, that focuses on shared values. Doesn't mean that we're not going to have disagreements on any wide range of issues, including with respect to foreign policy. But those differences pale in comparison to the differences with the folks on the other side of the aisle who have no real interest in helping our allies, but ultimately are just focused on petty politics, in my view. Yes, sir.
So my question is about campaign finance reform. What kind of strategies are you guys pursuing to keep dark money out of politics? As you know, people can make anonymous donations to nonprofits, tax-exempt organizations, and then they can, in turn, lobby Congress to get their will done. What are you guys doing to combat that? I know it was a big deal in the last Congress, but you guys don't have the gavel this year, so what are you doing to stop it?
Sure, and I know Veronica has worked on this issue going back to when we first came to the Congress in 2018. John Sarbanes, architect with Speaker Pelosi, of course, and Speaker Emerita Pelosi and members of the House Democratic Caucus of H.R. 1, spoke very powerfully about this just a few moments ago during our panel presentation to the caucus. Clearly, there are legislative tools that are available to us to get dark money out of politics, to end the corruption that has unfortunately metastasized in our nation's capital. House Republicans have no interest in pursuing those strategies. They are best those strategies embodied by H.R. 1, a bill that the House Democratic Caucus was passionate and continues to be passionate about and has made clear that if given the opportunity, will pursue that as a priority in the 119th Congress. Of course, as you said, we're going to have to win first this November, and unfortunately, House Republicans have used a number of the loopholes that you described to great effect on their side. They, as Leader Jeffries has articulated previously, they've got big money on their side. We've got the people. It's why we're putting people over politics, and I think ultimately at the end of the day, the American people agree with our sentiments and the way in which we are fighting for them, and will ultimately overcome the wave of dark money that we know, is a big component of their approach. But Veronica, care to?
I think you said it all. The only thing I will add is when you look at the priorities of each side at the beginning of the Congress, our number one priority and why getting dark money out of politics, why sweeping reform was evident is because it was our number one bill, H.R. 1, as our chairman mentioned. When you look at the contrast between what the priorities are, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have sought really to fight against our efforts to clean up politics and to provide sweeping campaign finance reform. It will again be one of our top priorities when we regain the majority in the House. This is why elections matter, because we are there for the people. We are not there for the big corporations or for the wealthiest 1%. We are there to deliver for the American public, and that means making sure that the smallest donor is on equal footing when it comes to transparency and power as the biggest donor. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you all again for being here. We appreciate it and look forward to visiting with you during the conference. And again, just appreciate you all coming out. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.